So I'm going to give a quick overview of a little app I've written called a Spirit Island Phase Tracker. A while back, I started to get into the board game Spirit Island, playing with some friends, and it's a very fun board game. I've enjoyed it a lot. But as I was learning, I went to see if there was a helper app to track phases of the game as I played because it can get a little complicated, and especially the rules as you add in different adversaries can get kind of complicated. And I didn't find one, so I started writing just a very basic phase tracker to walk me through the different phases of the game. If you've played, there's a growth phase, and then you gain energy, and then you have a spirit phase where you play fast powers, and there's fear phase, and then ravage build, etc. Anybody who's played knows all the phases. However, there are times when different phases can pop up in different orders depending on your adversary or different events, and each one has rules, and it can get a little confusing. So, what started out as a very simple app, I've now kind of evolved into this more complex tracker that helps me keep track of what's going on in my games. So here's a quick tour of what I've built so far. It is definitely work in progress. Um, but this is the main page when you come in, and you do have a little help screen here. We can see with some information about the app, and then a configuration screen with just a couple options. I'm going to add more, but right now there's just a timer option, and you can set a number of seconds for that timer to run. I'll show you what that looks like later, so I'll leave that on for now. Um, and then, the main screen, you can load where you say closed it on your previous session. It auto saves each time you do anything, so you can just hit that to reload. But I'm going to jump in and say I'm playing with Branch and Claw and the Jagged Earth expansion and Promobek 2 because those are the things I own. And we can now choose an adversary, and it does update this list. So if you see Scotland is here in the list, if I deselect Promo Pack 2, Scotland is no longer there. So we'll put that back, and then I'll go ahead and select, I'm going to say I'm playing against France, and I'll choose an adversary level of 6. Scenarios are here, they're not implemented, it's just a drop down here. It doesn't actually do anything yet, or I haven't implemented those rules yet. They get rather complex, and I'm not positive how I'm going to do that or if I will. And then number of players is 4. And then we'll start our game. And here you can select your spirits. So I'm going to say I'll play Lightning Swift Strike, and since I do have some expansions enabled, I can choose one of the aspects for that spirit. I'll say none. Shadows Flicker Like Flame also has some aspects, but if I select one like, I don't know, let's say Sharp Fangs, there are no aspects for that, or, like Volcano Looming High has no aspects. So it does, filter that down, and you can choose what you want, and then say next. It gives you a brief setup description of the board. There's some text formatting. I'll bring these closer together, but you can see it says the France rule to return all but 7 towns to the board, and then the Slave Rebellion under event under the top 3 cards of the event deck, and 1 town to land 1. So it gives you the setup hints for your adversary, as well as your fear cards and tokens and blight tokens, and your invader deck order. So if I go back, let's go back to the first screen here, and if I choose Brandenburg, Prussia, and go back in, my invader deck order now shows that very challenging 3-2-2, 3-3-3-3. So, and you can see the board setup rules have now changed for Brandenburg, Prussia. If I say next, then I get the spirit setup rules. And so this is nice if you've played, you always forget to look at your spirit setup, and then you have to look at the back of the card. And, so just a little summary screen there. And just a note, you can leave the spirits blank and then the screen is blank. The spirits aren't required in order to click through if you don't feel like doing that. So here's the first exploration screen, and this is also the first one with a timer. The timer has no penalty or anything. It's just a little countdown to keep you kind of on track, keep the game flowing. So, first exploration is very quick, just get it done so you're not going to run into issues with the timer. As well, you can also see I have icons here showing the health of explorers, towns, cities, and Dahan, and then checkbox for Blighted Island and the stages of the game. So that's the Invader card stage 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to jump back here and show you what this looks like if I switch back to France. So I'll say France 6, 4. So again, the board setup screen goes back. There's my spirits. No changes there. Actually, what I should do, I'll do England because England does have a change to that. So I'll grab England, come back forward, and now you can see my towns and cities each have 4 health. So that updates based on your opponent. So now I've settled in, I'm playing my game, and I can see here's the general description of the growth screen and a note about the Badlands tokens because I am playing with Jagged Earth and Branch and Claw, or Jagged Earth, I guess, for Badlands token. And then loss condition because there is an extra loss condition for England, so that's reflected there. And then the note about towns and cities having +1 health, which is already reflected here. I am going to add into the options screen the ability to turn off like the phase description or the Badlands reminder. If you don't want those rules, that's one of the to-dos for that config screen is to uncheck a box and those can be hidden per screen. So that's something I'm working on next. And then here's our energy screen. Again, the same, general description, that kind of thing. And you just kind of click through. So as you play the game, you just say, I'm moving on to the next phase, and you do that action, and then you move on to the next one, and you just keep kind of going through. So here's our event cards, and then fear cards. And then on the first one, you're not going to have a ravage stage because there's not going to be a card there. There may be some scenarios where you can end up with a build phase on turn, or no, you're always going to have build phase because there's first exploration. So we jump into a build phase. And this has some rules around building, and then the exploration phase. I'm going to show here then what happens if we had flipped over a stage 2 card. You would then click the stage 2 button, and now we get a little note that says, hey, if that card has a flag, here's what you do for it, and it's based on your opponent, of course. So stage 2 card flag reminders are here. And then as you play through, you can advance the invader cards, slow powers, time passes, and then back to growth. It does have a turn tracker built in, so now it knows, hey, we're on turn 2. So when we get over to fear, and now we have high immigration because we're playing England, we might have a card on the high immigration spot, and then ravage, build, and explore. So it is dynamic about what screens show up, fairly appropriate in timing. It's not perfect because it doesn't know what cards you're actually playing. It just knows what the expected next turn order is. So there may be times like that high immigration. You're not going to have anything there on turn 2, but it does go ahead and pop it up on turn 2. And then there's also Blighted Island checkbox. You can check that. It gives you a little note to flip the card over and follow the instructions on the back. And now the Blighted Island indicator is turned red. And any rules that would change because the island is blighted, it would have the ability to pop up a reminder on that. Can't think of any offhand, but does do that. So that's kind of the high level overview of where the app is today. Like I said, one of the things I'm working on is the idea of adding to the options screen to suppress different text. I'm going to work on the formatting for the text and add some spacing here so it's a little easier to read. One thing I'll note, it is able to dynamically resize the window. If you should have a window that's small enough the text doesn't fit, it will auto scroll or auto enable a scroll bar so you can scroll through that text. So if that becomes an issue, you can scroll through it. But I'll make this a little more readable, put some spacing in between. And then future editions after that will be a save button, or not a save button, a win-loss button where you can say, hey, I won or lost, select from a list of reasons on why you won or lost, like did you run out of invader cards, or did you win on a Fear 2 or a Fear 3 win, or um, destroy all the invaders, or whatever or did you lose because of the enemy loss condition, opponent loss condition. So once you select that, it'll save, and then I'll implement a thing where you can scroll through and see all your past games, and if you won or lost each one of them, who you were playing against with what spirits, and what the difficulty rating for that game was. So I will be implementing that. It's on my to-do list. And then I'm also going to publish this on GitHub as an open source project. So currently it runs in Python 3 with Kivy installed. It's a pretty easy install. So it runs on Windows, Mac, or Raspberry Pi. It is possible to compile a Python and Kivy application for the app stores, so I may do that at some point, but right now it requires a PC or a Raspberry Pi. I personally run it on a Raspberry Pi with a 7-inch touchscreen, and it runs very well on that. So at any rate, that's the high-level overview of my Spirit Island Phase Tracker app. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.